When you discover life spiraling completely out of control, and the entire world devolves into pure, chaotic noise, where do you turn for an antidote? For author Lulu Miller, this question was no abstract philosophical game, but a genuine mental breakdown at 32. Her life had descended into utter turmoil, a 7-year relationship collapsed, her private identity was exposed under painful circumstances, and the warm, stable life path she built over years shattered in a few months. During those sleepless nights, lying on the floor of her rented apartment, staring at the cracks on the ceiling and listening to distant police sirens, she felt a cold, consuming void from deep within the universe. It felt as if an invisible giant hand was stripping away all rules, safety, and order, leaving behind endless chaos and despair. This dread of chaos was rooted in Lulu since childhood. Her father was a brilliant yet coldly rational biologist. In his eyes, all motion in the world obeyed cold physical laws, with no supernatural miracles or warmth. On a summer afternoon when she was 7, little Lulu ran into her father's study, filled with test tubes and specimen jars, and asked the question almost all children ask, "What is the meaning of life?" Her father paused his experiment, took off his thick glasses, and in a flat, emotionless tone told her, "Child, you don't matter, and I don't matter. Humans on Earth are merely accidental specks of dust. The universe has no grand purpose, no good or evil, and no guardians. Chaos is the sole eternal reality of the world. Entropy will dismantle everything, stars will burn out, and all the order you build will eventually crumble into nothing." These words sank like lead into young Lulu's subconscious. For the next 20 years, her father's Chaos Manifesto hung over her like a dark cloud. Her father even pointed to dandelions along the roadside, telling her that humans are no more special than weeds, blown away by the wind without a trace. When life went smoothly, this cloud was just distant thunder, but when 32-year-old Lulu suffered devastating heartbreak and stood on the brink of collapse, her father's words, "Chaos is the only truth," became a hurricane sweeping away everything. If all things inevitably fall into chaos, if all effort is futile, how can one find the courage to keep standing in the mire? How can one build a mental refuge that will not collapse in a fragile world? In this desperate search, Lulu stumbled upon a name in the shadows of science history, David Starr Jordan. David Starr Jordan was America's most famous taxonomist, ichthyologist, and the founding president of Stanford University at the turn of the 20th century. In 19th-century science, Jordan was hailed as the man who collected chaos. Throughout his life, he identified, named, and classified thousands of new fish species, accounting for nearly 30% of all fish known to humanity at the time. What drew Lulu was not merely his academic glory, but his absurdly relentless persistence in facing destruction. In an era when science was just brushing away religious mist, Jordan was like a knight wielding a scalpel and alcohol jars, charging single-handedly into the vast ocean, swearing to bestow exact names and places upon every living creature in chaotic nature. Lulu began feverishly reading through Jordan's diaries, manuscripts, letters, and thick autobiography. She desperately wanted to know, what kind of indomitable force enabled a man to possess such unshakable confidence before vast, unfeeling nature? When the universe hurled destruction and chaos at him, how did he construct order with his own hands? Could this 19th-century scientist be the antidote to save her own life? To understand David Starr Jordan's obsessive drive for order, one must journey back to a northern New York farm in 1851. Jordan was born in a remote, quiet town. His father was a hard-working but conservative farmer, and his mother was a woman extremely strict about religion and morality. In rural America at that time, a boy's fate was usually settled at birth: plow, harvest, inherit the farm, and pass the cycle to the next generation. Young Jordan displayed a temperament completely at odds with his surroundings. He was tall, somewhat awkward, not good at sports, and unable to find joy in heavy farm work. What truly brought peace to young Jordan were the wild woods surrounding the farm. At a very early age, he showed a peculiar psychological tendency: he could not tolerate the anxiety of the unknown. Whenever he saw an unnamed wildflower on a forest path, a bizarre fern, or an unmapped constellation in the night sky, deep dread arose within him. To young Jordan, unnamed things were chaotic ghosts lurking in the dark, ready to devour him. To combat this anxiety, teenage Jordan made a striking decision: he would map, number, and name everything around him. Under the dim light of the farm attic, he bought cheap paper and ink, teaching himself to draw detailed maps and star charts. He mapped village roads and streams, plotted celestial bodies, and pressed hundreds of flowers and herbs collected from the woods into specimens, writing their growth habits and self-assigned codes in neat penmanship. To figure out the names of every weed on the farm, he read through every botany book in the local library. In his eyes, as long as a piece of land had contour lines and a weed bore a Latin binomial, they were no longer unknown threats. When a flower was labeled and pressed into a specimen book, it was no longer a nameless creature fading in the wild, but part of a rational kingdom under his personal command. This process of ordering chaotic nature brought him an unprecedented sense of security and control. Just as Jordan was immersed in his scientific explorations, a violent storm swept over his family. In 1861, the American Civil War broke out. Jordan's most idolized older brother, Rufus, enlisted with romantic enthusiasm. Rufus was a few years older, cheerful, romantic, and young Jordan's sole emotional pillar and protector. The brothers had laid on summer grass countless times, gazing at the stars and discussing dreams of distant worlds. In young Jordan's eyes, his brother was a hero who could ward off all uncertainty. Rufus's departure brought the cruelty of war straight to the door of their quiet farm. Just a year later, a cold military letter arrived. Rufus contracted fatal typhoid fever in an army camp and passed away in agony. His brother did not even die under bullets on a battlefield, but from the absurd, random torture of a virus. When Rufus's cold body was brought back to the farm, the family plunged into heavy, silent grief. His mother turned entirely to religion, praying to God day and night. Young Jordan experienced his first severe trauma regarding chaos. His brother's death had no noble meaning, only absurdity and randomness. On that cold winter day, Jordan realized deeply that nature creates flowers and stars, but also scatters disease and death. It cares nothing for human love or hate, and can strip away a person's most cherished possessions in the most heartless, irrational manner. Facing sudden destruction, Jordan did not pray to God like his mother, nor did he succumb to grief. He chose a unique psychological defense mechanism. He buried himself deeper into classifying and naming natural things. If nature was a chaotic monster of ruthless destruction, humanity's sole salvation was chaining that monster inside the map of science. After his brother's death, longing for a wider world, Jordan left the farm and entered Cornell University. In an era of rapid scientific growth, Jordan's talent quickly stood out. He mastered botany and zoology, demonstrating extraordinary energy and focus. The pivotal turning point that shaped his life faith occurred in the early 1870s on Penikese Island. Penikese Island was a desolate island off the coast of Massachusetts. In 1873, Louis Agassiz, America's greatest naturalist and Harvard professor, founded an unprecedented summer natural history school on the island. Agassiz was a sun-like figure in science, a Swiss-born anatomist and charismatic orator with deep eyes and a booming voice. His teaching philosophy was radical. He rejected traditional textbooks, leading students to the seashore, throwing fresh marine creatures before them and shouting, "Study nature, not books." 22-year-old Jordan stepped onto Penikese Island as one of the first students. On that wind-swept, salty island, Jordan met the mentor who changed his life. Agassiz taught Jordan how to dissect bone, scale, and viscera with microscopes and scalpels, and imparted a grand, breathtaking worldview. By rough wooden tables, Agassiz cut open sea urchins and dogfish, revealing exquisite internal structures and life patterns. In Agassiz's eyes, no species in nature was a product of random evolution, but a concrete manifestation of divine wisdom. Agassiz believed nature was a masterpiece written by God, and every species was a word in that book. When a scientist discovered a new species and mapped its branch on the tree of life, they were decoding God's thoughts. Agassiz told students that taxonomy was no dry cataloging, but a sacred divine mission. Scientists were interpreters of nature, messengers outlining divine order from chaos for humanity. This concept of elevating scientific taxonomy to a divine calling hit Jordan like lightning. During those nights on Pennakees Island, listening to the roaring Atlantic waves, Jordan's inner anxiety was shattered by a fierce sense of mission. He found his lifelong battlefield. If his brother's death showed him nature's cruelty, Agassiz's teaching gave him the ultimate weapon to conquer it. He was no longer a lonely collector fleeing reality, but an architect of order carrying a divine mission. During his stay on Pennakees Island, Jordan made a decision that defined his academic direction. He abandoned botany and devoted all his energy to studying fish. Fish are the oldest, most diverse, and most elusive vertebrates on Earth, hiding in dark, surging underwater worlds across shallow reefs and oceanic trenches. In 19th-century taxonomy, fish remained a wilderness of unknown chaos and errors. For Jordan, this unknown ocean was the perfect battlefield. The more chaotic and unclassified a realm was, the more it proved the greatness of the order builder. He followed Agassiz along beaches, collecting fish specimens, learning how to preserve corpses in harsh conditions, measuring fin counts, scale arrangements, and skeletal structures. Agassiz's guidance gave Jordan academic direction and injected a dominant, moral optimism. Agassiz believed that as long as humans maintained reason, diligence, and focus, no natural mystery was unconquerable. This belief reshaped Jordan. From a shy, anxious farm boy, he transformed into a scholar with a steel will and absolute self-confidence. At the end of that summer, Jordan wrote a vow in his diary: he would travel to every water on earth, dragging unnamed creatures from dark underwater worlds into the light of reason. Leaving Pennakees Island, Jordan officially launched his multi-decade quest for fish. Carrying simple luggage, vast batches of glass jars, toxic formaldehyde, and volatile alcohol, he boarded trains and steamships across America. From clear mountain streams in the Appalachians to bug-infested swamps in Florida, from the vast Great Lakes to the roaring Pacific coast, Jordan was everywhere. Behind him, glass jars filled with clear alcohol stacked higher, forming a fortress of reason built of glass and spirit. In an era of crude transportation, searching for new fish was grueling, dangerous physical labor. Jordan often waded in freezing streams for days, blocking currents with heavy nets. He trudged through swamps infested with mosquitoes and venomous snakes, hauling heavy wooden crates of alcohol jars. To capture deep-sea fish, he braved storms aboard small fishing boats. Many colleagues quit due to hardship and illness, but Jordan displayed terrifying energy and resilience. Whenever he discovered a new fish in his net, sudden ecstasy washed away all fatigue. He immediately sliced open the abdomen with a surgical scalpel, examined the skeleton, wrote its name in Latin on a paper tag, stuffed tag and specimen into a jar, filled it with alcohol, and sealed it with wax. In Jordan's eyes, that transparent glass jar was the strongest fortress in the world. No matter how storm winds raged outside, as long as the fish was preserved in alcohol and the tag remained inside, the name and order of that species endured forever. This was no longer mere research, but a triumphant victory of human willpower against natural entropy. By the 1880s, 30-something Jordan published dozens of high-quality papers, identifying and naming hundreds of new fish. He became America's recognized authority on ichthyology and was appointed president of Indiana University, the youngest university president in the nation. Later, tycoon Leland Stanford hired him as the founding president of Stanford University with massive funding and total trust. In the eyes of colleagues and students, Jordan was unbelievable, energetic, widely read, emotionally stable, never wasting time on hesitation, regret, or emotional turmoil. Observing Jordan's life from afar, Lulu Miller felt deep awe and confusion. To her, struggling in pain, Jordan seemed like a giant from another species. When most people crumpled like dry leaves before life's tragedies, Jordan carved a wide path through chaos with sheer willpower. He seemed to have found the secret to conquering entropy and destruction. At this stage, Lulu held near worshipful respect for Jordan. She tried to draw strength from his words, telling herself that if she maintained absolute focus and rationality like Jordan, she could piece together her broken life. Yet during this admiring search, perceptive Lulu sensed a troubling undercurrent. Behind Jordan's confident, soaring words hid an extreme aversion to uncertainty and a chilling coldness willing to erase any imperfection for the sake of order. When a man believes he represents absolute reason and divine order, does he still hold empathy for ordinary suffering? When his obsession with order transcends everything, will it save the soul or become a destructive force that devours everything? At the peak of his life, Jordan ambitiously established America's largest fish specimen collection at Stanford University, preparing to push his fish empire to unprecedented heights. He did not know that a super earthquake far worse than the Civil War was waiting for him at the corner of 1906. Facing nature's ultimate mockery and destruction, what breathtaking choice will David Starr Jordan make?